Polygon bikes have a few different gravel bike offerings, and I've done some pretty extensive testing on two of them. The Bend, which is adventure ready and off-road biased, and the newer Tambora, which is, quote, race ready and built for speed. In this video, a comparison between these two bikes, the things that I like and dislike about each, and a couple of more general thoughts or humble suggestions on what I think Polygon might consider doing in the future. And to be transparent up front, this is not a paid sponsorship in that no dollars were exchanged, and Polygon hasn't seen this video nor reviewed its content before it went live. Although the agreement that I have with Bikes Online, who is a Polygon distributor, is that they send both of these demo bikes to the channel for a few months, and in exchange for producing a standalone video on each, as well as producing this comparison video, I'll keep the bike of my choosing and send the other demo unit back. So kind of an interesting one today because while I do plan to talk through the differences between these two bikes and who I think each bike is for, ultimately I'll reveal my personal preference at the end when I share which bike I'm going to hang on to. So let's get the basic specs comparison out of the way first, and then we'll jump into the differences in geometry, ride feel, and the nuances of each bike. So the Bend, like I mentioned in the review video, is a true off-road biased adventure bike. With this tall stack, high trail, and huge tire clearances, it kind of blurs the line between gravel and MTB, and is most at home on dirt and rowdy descents. Now this model here, the Bend R9X, weighs in at 22.8 pounds with no pedals in size medium. The Tambora, on the other hand, is equally capable on-road or off. It's got a full carbon frame, fork, and seat post, and a more, we'll say, traditional gravel geometry, if that's a thing. This demo Tambora G8X weighs in at 20.9 pounds in size medium with no pedals, which is nearly 2 pounds less than the Bend. Now, part of this weight reduction comes from the lighter carbon frame on the Tambora and the narrower 700C by 40mm tires. The Bend, on the other hand, features an alloy frame and carbon fork and comes stock with 700C by 44mm tires. And in the place of a lightweight rigid carbon seat post, the Bend also features an electronically actuated SRAM reverb axis dropper seat post, which is cool and flashy, but definitely adds some weight. On the other hand, a lot of the stuff is actually the same on both models. The group sets for both bikes is the SRAM Rival Axis Explorer group, featuring Rival hydraulic disc brakes and a 1x12 electronic drivetrain, featuring a 10-44 cassette and a 40-tooth chainring up front. It should be noted though that if you opt for the highest spec Bend, the V9X, you actually get a SRAM GX Eagle Axis drivetrain instead, featuring a 10-52 cassette and a Fox suspension fork with 40mm of travel, but in this video here we're comparing the mid-spec Bend R9X. Additionally, the wheels are also the same on both models and are somewhat a surprise spec. The Novatec tubeless-ready carbon wheels with 24mm inner rim width come pre-taped and weigh in at 1,650 grams on my scale for the pair, which for a stock complete build is pretty respectable, especially at this price point. Which actually brings me to pricing. The Bend R9X and the Tambora G8X are actually the same price, both retailing for $3,000 US in mid-2024. However, Bikes Online, which is again Polygon's primary US distributor, is always having sales, and currently the Bend can be had for $2,700 US, and the Tambora is on sale for $2,800 US. So from a financial standpoint, it's basically a wash. Both bikes are very different and differently spec'd, but priced about the same. It does deserve mentioning that $2,800 US for a full carbon frame, fork, seat post, and carbon wheels with SRAM electronic group set is basically unheard of in the industry. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anything remotely close to this spec for the money. But more on Polygon's value proposition a little bit later in the video. So with the specs out of the way, we can talk about the geometry of these bikes. The best way to do that, I think, is by comparing them on one of my favorite sites, bikeinsights.com. Okay, so this is the medium Bend R9X superimposed on a medium Tambora G7. Now keep in mind, Bike Insights doesn't always have every submodel available, but the geometry is the same between the G7 and the G8X. So the first thing that stands out is the stack. Now in the review video for the Tambora, I mentioned that the stack is unusually tall for a bike in this class at 593mm. Now I'm typically used to riding a bike with a stack 15 to 20mm less. But then when you look at the Bend, which is here in white, the stack is a whopping 612mm, which is nearly 20mm higher than the already tall Tambora. Now this is one of the first things that I noticed when riding the Bend is just how upright I was sitting. Another thing that stands out as soon as you get on the bike is how much longer the Bend is than the Tambora. Now I should mention quickly that the Tambora has these flip chips that allow you to sort of convert the geometry between what Polygon calls speed gravel mode or a more racy all-road configuration. And what's displayed here in Bike Insights is the speed gravel mode. But anyways, even in this slightly more relaxed configuration, the Bend still has longer chainstays at 440 millimeters and a longer horizontal front center by about 18 millimeters. So in total, the Bend's wheelbase is about 35 millimeters longer than the Tambora's, in the same size, and you can definitely feel it while riding. And then what became apparent once descending was the front end of the bike. The Bend does have a slacker head tube angle and a smaller fork offset, both of which lead to a larger trail figure than the Tambora. Now for a traditional gravel bike, a trail in the high 50s to low 70s is pretty common, and for a typical hardtail mountain bike, you might expect to see trail in the range of high 80s to low 100s. So the Bend, like I mentioned in the review video, kind of spans this gap or blurs the line between gravel and mountain bikes with a trail of 85.8 millimeters. Now for a gravel bike, this is extremely slack, and consequently, it's really stable when descending. Now for as long and slack as the Bend is, I was surprised to see that the bottom bracket height is actually lower on the Tambora. And this isn't just because of the narrower tires. The bottom bracket drop, which doesn't depend on tire size, is the vertical distance below the line connecting the axles, and it's actually 6 millimeters larger on the Tambora, which I actually appreciate. It could be that some elements of the newer Tambora are partially based on feedback from the Bend, and I would bet that if Polygon ever updates the Bend's geometry, they'll probably drop the bottom bracket a bit lower as well. So those are a couple of the key differences in geometry between the bikes. Now, how do they ride overall, and who is each bike most suited for? So as far as spec, the group sets are the same, the wheels are the same, and the price is just about the same. But these are completely different bikes. Again, the Bend is a true off-road charger and is most at home sending it down trails shared by cross-country mountain bikes. It is, however, pretty slow by comparison everywhere else. Now, I thought it might be due to the stock tires, so I put on a set of the Ritchey Speedmax gravel tires, which I have to say roll remarkably fast despite their aggressive-looking tread. But even the upgraded tires weren't enough to make it feel fast while rolling along the flats. I think the long chainstays and slacked-out front end, basically everything that makes it a good descender, really make it tough to consider the Bend as an all-rounder gravel bike for everyday use. I think if you're the type of person who is not willing to sacrifice downhill performance and capability, then the Bend could be for you. You'll be slow to get to the descent, but once you're flying downhill, you'll likely be pretty happy. The Tambora, on the other hand, is not completely on the other side of the gravel spectrum. I'd say it's more centered toward the middle. The geometry is pretty conservative with a slight lean toward comfort, mostly because of the taller than usual stack and slightly lower than usual bottom bracket. Now personally, I favored riding the Tambora in quote speed gravel mode, and even in this slightly more relaxed configuration, the bike feels much faster and more lively without feeling too skittish. On roads and flat gravel, the Tambora motors along with noticeably less effort than the Bend, and on the descents, sure, the Tambora isn't quite as confident as the Bend, but I had no issues navigating the same trails on both bikes. Again, I'm not the type of rider who goes balls to the wall on the downhill anyways, so I didn't feel like I took full advantage of the Bend's downhill prowess. And for me, that's okay. I would say that the Tambora is more suited to someone who prefers like an all-arounder type of bike. Now I know there's really no such thing as a one bike for everything quiver killer, but a lot of bikes come reasonably close, and the Tambora does a great job on road and off. So the big question here, which bike am I going to hang on to? Now, probably no surprise here, but I really prefer the Tambora. This bike definitely suits my personality better, but it's not without its quirks. Now, I've gone in detail about the questionable design choices in the review video, but in summary, I would say that the flip chips aren't entirely necessary in my opinion. And the bike's aesthetic is a bit extreme for my taste. Now, the ability to adjust the geometry between gravel and road modes sounds really cool, but in practice, it's not a trivial task. It easily takes 10 minutes to convert, and honestly, I think most people will find the one that they prefer and probably just leave it in that configuration. I also mentioned in the review video that the Tambora is just trying to be too many things. It's advertised as the do-it-all, everything drop bar bike for races and adventures, but in trying to be too many things, it's kind of a master of none situation. For instance, it claims to be an adventure-ready rig, but there aren't any fork mounts. It's also catered to competitive racers, that's quoting from Polygon's website, but I would say that the geometry isn't particularly aggressive or race-oriented, especially with the high stack, even in all-road mode. Nonetheless, there's still a lot to like about the Tambora and the rest of Polygon's offerings, which brings me to my thoughts on Polygon's gravel lineup as a whole, and where I really think they can stand out in an already crowded market. And it doesn't involve flashy party tricks or peacocking using head-turning, somewhat polarizing frame design features like a bulbous head tube, extreme angles, and massive-looking chainstays. On the contrary, I believe that Polygon is very well suited to leverage their #1 value proposition, which is their value per dollar to the customer. Polygon is actually a huge company with their own manufacturing facilities, and they have an enormously advantageous economy of scale. Oof, that was a good sentence right there. Now, I mentioned in a previous video that Polygon's top-selling mountain bikes, those in the Siskiyou series, are no-frills, high-quality, modern, highly spec bikes available to consumers for hundreds of dollars less than their big brand competitors. And in my opinion, that's the main value proposition for why you would buy a Polygon. Same performance at a lower price, and essentially the only thing you're not getting is the big brand name. So I feel that what Polygon might consider doing is Siskiyou-fying their gravel lineup. Take their entry-level Polygon Path X4 and X5. It's basically an entry-level gravel bike with an alloy frame spec'd with Tiagra or 105, and it's priced at $800 to $1,200. I think it's a perfect platform to build on to create an affordable but high-performance, no-frills gravel bike for the masses. I would say that the geometry is spot on, and in all honesty, it very closely resembles the hugely popular Specialized Diverge. My unsolicited advice to Polygon would be, why not develop a slightly more premium carbon version of the Path, spec the same carbon Novatech wheels, and offer a GRX 600 mechanical group or something similar, retail it for $2,000, and put it on rotating sale for $1,800. And if they did that, I think they would have an extremely strong competitor to all the Diverges and Topstones and Asperos out there. But anyways, I digress. The Polygon Bend and the Tambora are two very different drop bar offerings, and while I enjoyed riding both, I'm not personally adventurous enough to reap the full benefits of the Bend's off-road spirit. I'd say that the Tambora just suits my style a bit more. I just wish that the silhouette of the frame was a little bit more subdued and that the flip chips were eliminated. If you have any questions about these bikes or my experience with either of them, just drop them down below and we'll try and get back to as many as we can. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. We'll see you next time.